Today, let's talk about EMS organizational standards, regulatory standards, and EMS accreditation. There's a lot to cover here. We can get real deep, but we're going to focus on a few kind of key primary areas to keep it a little bit more simple, and then you'll have a lot of reading to do, kind of digging into some of these standards and accreditation requirements. Now, there are a number of accrediting groups and organizations out there. We're going to focus on just a kind of a key three here. First is just state regulation. Whatever state you are in, you know there is some sort of department, some sort of office of EMS that is overseeing you. And then there is regulation. There is codified law that says what you can do, what you can't do. We're going to talk about accrediting agency CAS and talk about KHEP, more specifically COA, COAMPS. So state regulation, and then a couple big accreditors that you should be aware of if you aren't already. Again, there are a number of other smaller accrediting bodies for kind of specialty reasons, but these are the big ones we're going to focus on here today. And now, why should we care about these organizations? Well, one, sometimes they're required. Our state regulation, our laws in a given state for our operation, those are required. We should probably pay attention to the law and be aware of state regulations. And then those other accrediting bodies, it kind of gets into best practice, and it makes kind of tells us make sure that we are following best practices in whatever venture we are sitting out in. And then just sometimes just recognition, putting a sticker on the side of your ambulance that says you're accredited by whatever agency gives you a little bit of recognition, a little bit of bragging rights. Let's start with our state regulators. They are probably the most important of this group. So every state's going to have some sort of office or department of EMS in whatever larger department there is. But there's some sort of office of EMS in whatever state you live in or work in, and state regulation. This office of EMS is going to oversee certification or licensure of all EMS providers. It's going to oversee educational standards within that state, and sometimes states oversee this kind of with the entire state. Sometimes they break them into regions, but they're going to oversee all this stuff through a centralized office of EMS. So educational standards, even though we have an educational accrediting body, the state still says and still kind of oversees what we're doing when we're educating our providers. They also oversee ambulance standards. So what defines an ambulance in your state? What should that ambulance be stocked with? How should that ambulance be staffed? Is going to be defined by state regulation. And then the state's going to be in charge of, or should be in charge of, data collection. So data flows into the state through your PCRs, entered into NEMSIS, this national EMS information system, this data system on a national level. So your state office of EMS, if they are reporting to NEMSIS, which they should be, and most are for the most part, they're going to be collecting this data and flowing it through NEMSIS. Our first kind of accrediting body that we're going to talk about, we'll talk about two of them. The first one is CAS, Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services. So this accreditation accredits your organization as an ambulance service, as a delivery service. Can be medical transport, can be 911, emergency transport, can be a combination of both, but CAS accreditation is completely optional. This is a private nonprofit organization. You can go out for CAS accreditation if you want. If you don't want, no harm, no foul. But what CAS accreditation does, gives you a little bit of recognition and says that your organization is following best practices from top to bottom, street level to administrative, community relations. Best practices there, you're following it. There's some pros and cons to CAS accreditation. Gives you a little bit of recognition. You get to put the sticker on the side of your ambulance and say you're CAS accredited and you are one of however many hundred organizations in the country that are CAS accredited, but it is a little pricey. It's a little costly. They do have a sliding scale, or last I checked, they had a sliding scale based on your call volume. So the bigger your agency, the more calls you run per year, your price goes up a little bit for CAS accreditation. But a little bit of recognition, and it just says you get to brag that you are following best practices, and you are one of the best best run ambulance services out there in the country. And then next is COAMPS. It's under CAHEP, kind of a subset of CAHEP, but it's Committee on Accreditation of EMS Programs. So this is educational accreditation. They oversee educational standards, make sure that we are following, proper best practice for educational standards, whereas CAS was best practices for just organizational administrative function. These are educational standards, educational function. Um, COA accreditation is important, and you might not think it's really important for your organization, but if your organization wants to start, um, an EMT course, wants to start a paramedic program, any of this, you're going to be looking at COA accreditation. COA accreditation is really important because it is required for National Registry eligibility. For a student to be eligible to take the National Registry test, EMT or advanced EMT or paramedic, they must have graduated from a COA accredited program. If not, then they can't take the National Registry test. In North Carolina, we are not a registry state. Excuse me. So you might not think that's super important, but if they want to go anywhere else, right? North Carolina is one of like 2 or 3 or 4 states that doesn't completely require National Registry. So if they want to go anywhere else in their career, they're going to need National Registry. We want to make sure that we are COA accredited. And then your state regulations, depending on where you live, where you work, where you function, state regulations may actually require COA accreditation of all of its educational programs within the state. North Carolina has talked about it, currently doesn't, but all of North Carolina's um, educational requirements mirror and echo COA requirements. So hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So regulations may say that you have to have COA accreditation. Other regulations in your state, wherever you are, might not say that you have to have COA accreditation, but make you follow the standards anyway. So we're going to pay attention to them. So that's a super quick overview because in Blackboard you have a lot of resources, a lot of standards, a lot of regulations to just kind of peruse through, read through. So familiarize yourself with these general standards. Please don't memorize everything, but here are all these resources for when you need them, if you need them. To kind of familiarize, there we go, familiarize yourself with state regulations. We've got North Carolina state regulations because Western Carolina is in North Carolina, so that's where we pulled. You've got North Carolina regulations in there. You've got COA regulations and standards, and then you've got CAS standards and a couple quick little CAS videos for you as well. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So questions, comments, concerns, or cuss words, send them my way.